I thought I was moving into a place that would take care of me, but I didn't realize I was also leaving behind pieces of my life I could never get back. I thought I was moving into a place that would take care of me, but I didn't realize I was also leaving behind pieces of my life I could never get back. It wasn't a sudden realization, not something that hit me all at once, but a quiet understanding that grew day by day. As familiar parts of my routine slowly disappeared and were replaced by something that felt organized, efficient, and yet strangely empty. If you're listening to this right now, perhaps you or someone close to you is considering a nursing home. It often comes from a place of love and concern. Families want safety, proper care, and the reassurance that someone will always be there in case something goes wrong. And on the surface, it seems like the right decision. After all, who wouldn't want trained staff, regular meals, and a structured environment designed to support aging bodies? But there is another side to this decision that people rarely talk about, not because they want to hide it, but because it's difficult to explain unless you've lived through it. Today, I want to share that side with you, not to create fear, but to offer honesty. Because understanding the full picture can help you make a choice that truly respects both the body and the heart. I invite you to stay with me, to listen carefully, and to reflect on what matters most to you or to the person you care about. And if at any point this story feels familiar or brings up your own experiences, I encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice might help someone else who is quietly facing the same decision, wondering what lies ahead, and hoping they are choosing the best possible path. Let me tell you more about what daily life began to feel like over time, because the changes were not always obvious at first. They revealed themselves slowly, in moments that seemed small on their own, but together carried a weight that was hard to ignore. There was a gentleman named Richard who lived 2 doors down from me. He used to be a shop owner, the kind of man who greeted every customer by name and remembered what they liked. One morning, we sat together during breakfast, and he told me that what he missed most was making simple choices. Not big decisions, just the ordinary ones. He said that even deciding to walk to the corner store used to give his day a sense of direction. Now, his days were planned for him, and while that made things easier in some ways, it also made everything feel the same. I began to notice that sameness too. Days were structured, predictable, and safe, but they often lacked something personal. Meals were served on time, but they weren't the meals we grew up loving. Activities were organized, but they didn't always match who we used to be. It felt as if individuality slowly softened around the edges, replaced by routines that worked for everyone, but didn't truly belong to anyone. Another resident, Maria, often sat by the window in the afternoons. She used to talk about her garden, about the way she cared for her plants every morning, how she knew exactly when they needed water or sunlight. One day she told me she missed being responsible for something living. In the nursing home, everything was already taken care of, and while that removed physical strain, it also took away a quiet sense of purpose that had once filled her days. That is something people don't always consider. When life becomes too easy in a certain way, when every need is anticipated and met without effort, it can slowly take away the feeling that you are still contributing to your own life. And that feeling, as small as it may seem, is deeply connected to a person's sense of dignity. I also remember a period when I stopped joining the group activities. At first, I attended regularly, thinking it would help me adjust. But over time, I realized I was going through the motions rather than truly enjoying them. Conversations felt repetitive, and sometimes I found myself longing for deeper connection, for someone who knew my past, my stories, the life I had lived before coming here. Without those connections, something begins to fade. It's not just memory, but identity. You start to feel like a smaller version of yourself, defined more by your current condition than by the full life you have experienced. There were also moments when I noticed how quickly time seemed to pass without anything marking it as meaningful. At home, even simple routines had a personal rhythm. A cup of tea in a favorite chair, a short walk outside, a familiar neighbor passing by. These moments created a sense of continuity. In the nursing home, time was measured differently, often by schedules rather than by experiences. And perhaps one of the most difficult parts was adjusting to the feeling of waiting. Waiting for meals, waiting for assistance, waiting for visits, waiting for the day to end. It's a subtle shift, but an important one. When much of your day is spent waiting, it can begin to feel like life is no longer something you actively live, but something that simply moves around you. None of these experiences came from cruelty or neglect. The staff worked hard, and many of them cared deeply. But the system itself is designed for efficiency and safety, not always for preserving the deeper parts of what makes a person feel alive. Over time, I began to understand that what I was missing was not just my old home, but the sense of being fully present in my own life. And that realization didn't come with anger, but with a quiet sadness that stayed with me, even on the days when everything seemed to be going just fine on the surface. The moment that changed everything for me did not come with a loud realization or a dramatic event. It came quietly, in a way that almost felt ordinary at first. It was early evening, the kind of hour when the light softens and the day begins to settle. I was sitting by the window, watching shadows stretch across the ground, and for a brief moment, I forgot where I was. In my mind, I was back in my old home. I could almost feel the familiar chair beneath me, hear the distant sounds of a neighborhood I knew by heart, and sense the comfort of a place filled with my own memories. But then, just as quickly, that feeling slipped away. What replaced it was the sight of a parking lot, a row of identical windows, and a quiet hallway behind me that echoed with footsteps that did not belong to anyone I truly knew. It was in that moment that something settled deeply inside me. I realized that what I had lost was not just a house or a routine, but a sense of belonging that cannot easily be recreated. Everything around me was designed to meet my needs, and yet something essential was missing, something that no schedule, no staff, and no facility could fully provide. I began to understand that safety, while important, can sometimes come at the cost of something less visible but equally vital. When every part of your day is arranged for you, when your environment is no longer shaped by your choices, a quiet distance begins to form between you and your own life. You are present, but not fully participating. You are cared for, but not always connected. As this realization grew clearer, I started noticing it in others as well. There was a kind of stillness in the building, not just physical, but emotional. People moved through their days, following routines, attending activities, eating meals together, yet many carried a look that suggested they were somewhere else in their thoughts. It was not unhappiness in an obvious sense, but something more subtle, a kind of fading that happens when a person's world becomes smaller than it used to be. One evening, I spoke with a woman who had lived there longer than I had. She told me something that stayed with me. She said that the hardest part was not the physical limitations, but the feeling that her life had been reduced to a series of managed moments. She missed the unpredictability of her old life, the small decisions, the unexpected conversations, even the minor inconveniences that once gave her a sense of control. That was when the truth became impossible to ignore. A person does not only need care to live well. A person needs meaning, connection, and the ability to shape their own days, even in small ways. Without that, something inside begins to grow quiet. What surprised me most was how easy it is for this change to go unnoticed from the outside. To visitors, everything may appear calm, organized, even comforting. There are clean rooms, regular meals, and attentive staff. But the deeper experience, the one that lives inside each resident, is not always visible. And that is where the regret begins to take form. Not as a sudden wave, but as a slow understanding that while certain problems have been solved, something equally important has been left behind. It is the realization that being protected is not the same as truly living, and that comfort without connection can feel empty over time. This is not a truth meant to discourage, but it is one that deserves to be acknowledged. Because once you feel it, once you recognize that quiet distance between yourself and the life you once knew, it becomes something you cannot easily forget. And for many, it becomes the hardest part of all to accept. When I look back on everything I've experienced, I don't see the decision as simply right or wrong. Life is rarely that simple, especially when it comes to aging, health, and the realities families must face. What I see more clearly now is that comfort and care, while essential, are only part of what makes a life feel whole. Growing older does not mean a person stops needing purpose, choice, and connection. In fact, those things often become even more important. A familiar routine, a sense of being useful, the ability to make even the smallest decisions, these are not luxuries. They are quiet foundations that help a person feel like themselves, even as other parts of life begin to change. A nursing home can provide safety, And for many people, that safety is necessary. There are situations where medical needs or physical limitations make it the most practical option. But it is important to look beyond what is visible on the surface. A clean room, regular meals, and structured care do not automatically guarantee a fulfilling life. The emotional and psychological side of living deserves just as much attention. If you are helping someone make this decision or facing it yourself, take the time to ask deeper questions. Think about what brings meaning to daily life. Consider how independence can be preserved, even in small ways. Ask how connection will be maintained, not just through visits, but through real engagement and understanding. And if you are already living in such a place, it does not mean that all is lost. Even within limitations, there are ways to hold on to a sense of self. Reaching out to others, sharing stories, finding small routines that feel personal, these can help bring back moments of warmth and familiarity. And if you are already living in such a place, it does not mean that all is lost. Even within limitations, there are ways to hold on to a sense of self. Reaching out to others, sharing stories, finding small routines that feel personal, these can help bring back moments of warmth and familiarity.